joint finance and executive committee hybrid meeting to order here, at least for quorum. And I'll ask item 2, any changes to the agenda or members items?
Just one request on item 13. It says the executive session, if needed, not anticipated. I would like to ask to have an executive session to discuss personnel issues.
Okay, so add the need for an executive session for personnel discussion. All right, we'll get to that when we get down there. Anything else? Item 3, draft minutes from November 6, 2024.
Move to approve.
Thank you,
I'll
Andy.
second.
Thank you, Catherine. Discussion.
Yeah, I have just a clarification on page 3 of line. Well, actually, line 76. It's what is it? Page 2, essentially. It talks about the racial equity apiary, and most people think about it being, beehives. Is it because there's hives of people coordinating? But it probably needs to be a little clearer what that meant, because people go, well, what's beehives got to do with it?
Yeah, that was actually the formal name of the conference.
Yes, that was the title. There's
I know,
not much we
but
can
I
do
just
about
wondered
that.
if we needed any more clarification. If somebody read the minutes and goes, what does that mean?
Well,
I'm going to be a stickler, Catherine. If nothing was said at the meeting, you can't put it in the minutes.
Right.
That's true.
And I looked it up at the time we were discussing it, so that I informed myself about the metaphorical use of apiary.
Yeah, I just, when I was reading it, I know that it is a stickler, but I was just wondering, if people would be concerned, would wonder what that was.
I'm not sure that joint executive committee, finance committee meeting minutes are high on the list of people's reading.
It's probably true. We have to read them, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think it has a readership of less than 10.
Any other discussion? Or
no,
points
that
on the
was
minutes?
just that one.
Okay.
I just was curious whether people would be concerned or not.
Everybody who is in favor otherwise, please raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
I'm not going to vote, Chris, because I didn't attend.
Okay, you're abstaining. Thank you, Jeff.
And I did watch it on replay, so.
Okay, no problem. Anyone
because
else
I have a life.
abstaining or saying nay? All right, thank you. We'll move on to item 4, the fiscal year 24 audit, and thank Kyle again for being present. So I'll start, I guess, with Forrest.
Yeah, thanks once again to Kyle for joining us. No offense, Kyle, but hopefully for the last time, maybe for this cycle. But Kyle and his team were good enough to get us an updated draft that I sent to you, I guess, Tuesday. There should not have been any substantive or material changes in that draft from the one that we looked at on the 20th. There was just some minor updates to updating previous year figures, et cetera. Maybe some indirect rate, less than a percentage point cleanup. So I'm not sure if there's a desire to sort of get a recap of the results or not. They are the same as the last time. We do have a little bit of process still yet to do, as far as I understand, in the CBiz shop for quality control, which is just a requirement before the audit can actually be issued. So that's where we're at now. Kyle, I don't know if you want to add anything more about that process and where we expect to be. We are asking the committee to approve the audit tonight if you are comfortable. And then barring that, we may have to bring it back either at a special meeting or perhaps after the legislative breakfast, after the accountants have done their quality control. So I'll stop talking for a moment. Kyle, anything you want to add to that?
Sure. I'm glad you added this cycle to the last time I was going to see everyone, because I thought for a moment there I was getting the hook. Um, But no, I would just echo exactly what you just said. There really were no material differences between this draft of financial statements and the previous one as far as overall results. The quality control process is the same as it went through in the prior year at Markham. There's a reviewer of all of our audit engagements who just double checks to make sure we're not missing anything significant. We didn't have any material changes after last year's quality control review, and I'm not anticipating that we will this year. But it is a firm-wide policy that the financials go through, and so I would expect that process to be complete over the next week or so.
Next week or so? Okay. Does anybody have any questions for Kyle or myself regarding the audit or the process?
I do. I have two.
Okay.
Number one, we still have some yellow dates
Yep.
in the report,
Yeah,
and that's just a formality for when what's being referenced to is actually completed, right?
Yeah, the last step of the audit after it goes through our review process is sending a rep letter to Charlie and to Forrest.
Yep.
And then the date of that rep letter will be the date of the financial statements.
And now I have to ask the mean question that I always have to ask. And that Kyle, can you represent to us that neither you nor any of your staff received any suspicious pushback or, answers that weren't satisfactory to anything that you asked during the course of the audit?
I can confidently say that did not occur.
So with that, Mr. Chair, I'd move we accept the audit.
Thank you, Jeff. Anyone second that? I see Jackie's hand. I'll take your second, Jackie. Is that correct? Okay.
Yes.
Other discussion? Okay. Everyone clear on the motion? We're going to accept the audit. All those in favor, please say aye. Raise your hand. Anyone opposed or abstaining, please speak up. Thank you, Kyle. Thank you, Forrest.
yeah. Thanks so much.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Kyle.
Thank you.
Hope to see you next year.
Yeah, thank you, Kyle, and to your
Okay.
team.
Thanks, Forrest.
All right, we're gonna move on to item 5.
And actually, I'm seeing that Darren is not plugged in yet. I think Taylor was a little less confident that you were going to move that quickly. Can we defer and come and get to the next item and come back to this?
We'll skip item 5 and we will move to item 6, the legislative breakfast, where we will be meeting
I'd
next
like to be
Thursday.
here for that, and then I'll leave.
The
So
legislative breakfast?
Yeah.
Okay,
All right, perfect.
but you do not wish to be here for item 5? Jeff?
Hold on a second. I'm saving the audit to my drive here.
Let me
Oh.
go ahead.
And
So just start legislative breakfast conversation.
Yeah.
And we did, thanks to Emma, we have, I think, just about 60 registrants right now, about 20 legislators and about 20 municipal elected officials. So, and then 20, staff of either towns or RPC. So, it's pretty good. And we asked an additional question this year, which was, are there any topics that you want to make sure get addressed, or are hoping get addressed? And so we got, I don't know, probably maybe 12 or so of the people responded with most of the ones that responded had multiple suggestions. I don't know, Bard, were you one of those? He might have been. I can't remember. I didn't write down everybody's name of what they said, but just to give you a quick recap of what input we got from the registrants. 5 people wanted to make sure we talked about transit funding. And here's Darren. And this is in terms of which came up most frequently. 4 wanted to make sure we talked about housing. 3 brought up property taxes, education funding, or some variation of that. And then there were a number of single, only one person brought up single issues. Stormwater, mental health, infrastructure resiliency, water sewer funding. There might be some things connected there. So anyway, a clean heat standard also I think came up from one person. So just FYI of what we got there. And yeah, Chris and I were talking a little bit about the need to like focus this up because there's a million things. And so kind of what I have so far in terms of like focus is transit, just because GMT cuts, housing, keeping going on that thread. And probably if I was just going to do 3, I would probably do flood resiliency as something we need to focus more on as a state. And Jeff, and then I have, kind of your note from the board meeting about spending a little bit of time on the importance of investing in Chittenden County and not.
And how we are a resource to them, that we ask a lot from them, but they can feel free to ask from us.
Yeah.
It's not a one-way street.
Right.
I just think we need to, whatever you think are the
Yep.
3 top ones, we always have to close with that.
Yeah.
Particularly because so many of these members are newish.
Yep. And I'm anticipating when we get to open discussion, there's not going to be any avoiding the property tax issue. I personally, professionally don't know what the answer is there.
Well, nobody does. Nobody does. The commissioner's yield
Yeah.
letter assumes all the parameters that were in the long-term forecasts of the grand list growth and everything else. That doesn't say anything specific to how individual communities feed into that.
Yeah.
And even I would probably say even the 5.9 number, okay, doesn't include all the variables that go into each individual community's contribution to the state education fund based on the pupil weightings that they have from that terrible act that passed 2 years ago. That's been the genesis of all the problems. That isn't going to get repealed. That was softened last year by a bunch of one-time revenue that isn't going to be around this time.
Yeah, so I don't know, any suggestion about how to channel that part of the conversation? Or do we just kind of let it
We
go?
just tell them we're going to be focused on that, as an organization, as the differing parameters become resolved. The yield letter is a function of long-term projections, and it's statewide. And everybody's smart enough to know that individual municipalities vary from the statewide average. We found that out too painfully last year. And, we're here to get additional information and help them to understand how it affects communities. I think we should get, at least one person in each one of our member municipalities plugged in so that when things change, we're able to work with them to figure out what communities may have issues and what other communities might benefit from it. I think that's going to be a real critical issue this time around. Even if there's no increase, folks, that means we've institutionalized the increases from the last 2 years, which are over 30%.
Well, that's a good point.
Yeah. Yeah, and I do know, I expect one or more of the town or city managers are probably gonna speak to this because it's impacting municipal budgeting, right? Like in a major way.
Yeah, but like my community, the municipal portion's less than 25% of our total property tax bill. So
right. But what it's doing though is it's kind of creating at least a psychological pressure on the select boards to not have any increases, right?
Just like last year, everybody was petrified to go with their budget votes to the community.
Yeah, Bart.
I actually think it's more than psychological. There are a number of citizens and voters in our town who yell at the select board
Yeah.
about their tax bill. And when you point out 70% of his school taxes, literally some people say, well, how come I write a check to the town then?
Yeah, right.
I mean, so perception is reality, I suppose.
And with that property tax, and I don't know how you address that, as you pointed out, Jeff, but to me, I look at the three items that Charlie mentioned. You have transit, housing, and flood resiliency, but to me, they're a package deal. I mean, you see the examples of where housing is for flood resiliency. You see the example of more dense housing being served by transit, and any cutbacks in transit seem to go in the opposite direction of both our climate change goals and all the other stuff. If we're
And it has differential impacts across various communities
it
within
does,
our
because if
communities.
if it doesn't
And-
happen in Burlington, South Burlington, Essex, it's going to happen in Richmond, Bolton, and Huntington.
Jericho.
And,
Jericho.
yeah, and right where the slopes are, and more flood prone issues will happen. Bart, I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. I was just going to draw the connection between some sequential items here. So property taxes are going up, partly because we're staff heavy, and staff heavy includes health insurance. And that helps to impact affordability of housing. So housing, health insurance, staff and property taxes are all sort of
Yeah.
connected.
It goes in the other direction too, because there isn't enough housing available for the healthcare workers. They're paying premiums for traveling nurses and things like that, right? So
It's called the self-reinforcing do loop.
And some
I knew
employers are
you would
starting to
say it better than I would.
provide housing.
Or an Ouroboros.
well, what was that, Andy? I'm
Oh,
sorry.
I was just saying, some employers are starting to provide housing
Right. Yeah, they're kind of
because
getting
it's such
back
a
into that.
challenge.
Yeah.
Factory towns, company script. That sounds like a good
There you
idea.
And we're gonna
well,
put it all in Burlington.
So I apologize. Burlington, we're just going up.
Yep.
Up. So I apologize. Normally, I would have liked to have kind of the draft presentation for you tonight. But with my trip to Denver, that got waylaid. So please blame my daughter, and then nieces and nephews for giving me some cold virus. Also,
Yeah, right.
So I will try to get something out to you all early next week, just to take a quick look at, and if you have any feedback on the slides. I'm also going to try to talk to different attendees to see if they want to talk to some of the different subjects. So it's hopefully not me talking at the group as much as it has been the last year or two.
And I agree with Jeff's, finishing note to remind them of investing in Chittenden County, and that we are the resource for the state as well as an engine for the state economically. So,
yeah,
that's
and
wonderful.
Jeff, you also, when you use the word resource, you meant the RPC
That's
as
true.
as a entity
Yes.
being a resource to the legislators.
Yes, and the economic contribution means if we don't support the part of the state that's creating a disproportional amount of economic resources for the rest of the state, we only end up fighting all over collectively for a smaller pie.
And then
Yeah, I kind of have that. This isn't a zero-sum game. We need to grow the pie, right?
Yes.
and
Or it
so what I
becomes
was-
a zero-sum game.
And what I was struggling with is what Jeff was saying with the yield letter that should be included or emphasized. Can you summarize that quickly, Jeff?
Well, it's just the
Is a
yield letter.
balance?
Well, the yield letter just sets forth the general parameters in kind of a status quo fashion of what the determinants would be in the amount of education revenue raised per pupil for each of for statewide.
Yep.
Okay. That doesn't say anything about the differences between individual communities, but that lays out the marker for the trajectory that the education fund is on, unless the legislature does something with the governor. to change the
Okay.
trajectory.
So we need to tell them that because they're not gonna find that out themselves or haven't been told
Yeah.
that by the treasurer already.
And you can give them the
It's gonna be right there tattooed on their head all session. I
Right, you
think.
could give them the link to the yield letter for the people that are interested in being bored and reading something half of which they're not gonna understand.
All right, but we're gonna remind them of that.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, I don't know.
all right.
That may be too detailed for me, but I expect the conversation may take us there.
Yep.
Thank you.
So, okay. Well, thank you for that. And, I always, feel free to email me if you have something that, an important point or perspective you think we should bring up, next week. It's
We
just
will
next week. Okay. It's coming up quick.
Well, that's right, and we'll look forward to that preview on Tuesday, you said? Thank you.
Yeah, I will try to get out on Tuesday. Yep.
Super. All right, we're gonna circle back to item 5, Act 250, Section 248 applications. Darren,
And I'm gonna
welcome.
say bye-bye.
All right,
Bye.
bye-bye.
Thank you, guys.
And
Thank you, Jeff.
apologies, folks. Sorry I was not available right at the start of this meeting. I thought it would be take longer going through the FY24 audit. So thanks for being flexible. And this is my first executive committee meeting, so it's good to see you all. I've seen you all on the board, but thanks for having me. I don't know how Taylor normally runs this exactly, but you have 2 applications in front of you, or 2 letters in front of you. One of them, actually, I think both of them are for full petitions, so you've seen them before. The first one is the Addison Natural Gas Pipeline Project, and this one is a multi-county, multi-jurisdictional issue, but they essentially had to amend their certificate of public good because they did not seek an amendment before doing some changes to construction. So it's kind of an after the fact petition. So it's a little different, but the letter is exactly the same as the one you saw for the advance notice. One thing I will note for this is that it's going to be getting a new case number because the Public Utilities Commission dismissed this case saying it needed to follow a different administrative procedure. So they're going to be resubmitting probably in January. So we'll still seek your approval tonight because this is going to be the same letter we would issue in January regardless. This is just for the full petition. Any questions on that one?
So the case number 243277 will change, even though we're gonna approve this letter for this particular case number.
If you're comfortable with that, it's just saying insert whatever case number this ends up getting filed under.
Okay, so there'll be a new case number in lieu of the one that we're seeing right now, but it will be substantially the same letter supporting the same project.
Exactly.
Okay. That's clear. Do we want to vote on both of them together, folks? Both letters? Why don't we go to the next one, Darren?
Sure.
I'm sorry,
next-
if there were other questions on Addison Gas Pipeline, protesters, public? Hearing, seeing none.
Great.
Move on.
Second letter is for a 16 megawatt battery storage facility at Global Foundries. This is the only constraint that might have any potential conflict with ECOS is the agricultural soils, and we always defer to the Agency of Ag, which always says as long as the soil is stockpiled, they don't mind having any sort of solar panels or battery storage. In this case, they might actually have some impacts if they're paving the area, but again, we defer to AFM on those. We do have those suitability standards saying we support in-place upgrades, including storage, and we encourage locating energy generation proximate to existing distribution and transmission infrastructure. And the context for this is that Global Foundries is trying to become its own utility, so this is part of their comprehensive plan to supply their own power and manage their own grid issues. Any questions or comments?
Just clarification. I think they did get approved by the PUC to be their own utility, right? But this is part of them
Yes.
being their own utility. Yeah.
Correct. Thank you, Charlie.
Okay, anyone else? All right, we have 2 letters that we would like to approve. Need a motion to approve the
Move to
Addison
approve
Natural Gas.
the
Thank
2
you.
letters.
Appreciate it, Andy. Second?
I'll second.
Jack. Thank you, Jackie. Further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand or say aye. Anyone opposed or abstaining, please speak up. Okay, thank you, Darren.
Thank you all.
You were smooth. Hope this was painless.
Oh, yes. Great for me. Hopefully it was good for you folks.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Darren.
All right, we will move on to agenda item 7, the draft bylaws, which are in your packet and voluminous, as you will see the write-ups and markups.
Yeah.
Starting on
Um,
page, what is it, 9, 10?
I'm on page 10 of your packet. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is kind of the first time you're seeing this, these bylaw edits. And Catherine, the Board Development Committee, I think we looked at it. Sorry, the Board Development Committee looked at it probably a month ago now. And so just the timing worked out. They asked me to kind of go through it and make do a little bit of cleanup. So this is slightly edited from what the Board Development Committee saw. Andy and Catherine, Jeff, and
Was Karen?
Karen Peterson, I think, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And Chris, I think maybe you attended also, right?
I did attend. I didn't do any of the editing, but I watched you make the sausage.
You were. I think one of the things that we left the Board Development Committee kind of questioning a little bit as do we want to or how should we update our vision and mission, which are on that first page there. So you see some different language there. On line 12 is that's just an intro line with kind of a more minor change, instead of preeminent and integrated, it's an effective and inclusive regional organization. And this is, I think, coming from a variety of input we got from staff, which is a little bit more place-based, that we envision a livable and inclusive region characterized by healthy, vibrant communities. Are people reading this, or do you want me to pull it up?
I'm reading.
Everybody's
I'm
following
reading
along?
it.
Yeah, okay. Sorry, a livable and inclusive region characterized by healthy, vibrant communities, a sustainable economy, a clean environment, resilient infrastructure, and accessible, efficient transportation of people and goods. So kind of covering a wide range of topics, somewhat similar, but it's instead of an effective and inclusive regional organization, it's a livable and inclusive region. So it's a little bit more, regional vision as opposed to organizational vision. Bart.
For what it's worth, that's been my experience in this sort of endeavor in state departments and at least a couple of local organizations, that it looks at what's the end, the vision is the end state that we hope to achieve for the community. And in that lens, it would be the second as opposed to the first, which is inward looking. Vision tends to be outward looking for what.
Yeah. Again, this isn't up for action tonight, but any feedback? So I heard one voice kind of preferring the second option. Any other?
I agree with that, but in terms of bylaws, I think the bylaws are, I think the vision of what the role of the CCRPC is not something that should be in bylaws. I think that's something like that's in the ECOS plan. That's where something like that belongs. I think the vision, like we have name, vision, and mission. I think it is of the organization for the bylaws. And then from the bylaws, we go to the plans, the other things that we do. And that's where we as the organization put out the broader vision and the broader mission that encompasses the community. I mean, I think the vision, I can't say it's spot on for what our overall vision is, but I think it's pretty close, if not exactly, what the vision is of the organization, of what our role is in the community.
I will say organizationally, it's been a little confusing. And honestly, we haven't been using the vision or mission in either context because it's like we have dueling visions and missions. And so we don't use either one. Because you're right, Andy, we have like vision and mission in our bylaws, and then we have vision and mission in our ecos plan. And so I think part of
I
what
will say,
I'm kind of asking is like, can we land on one?
well, you know, it may be that, you know, in many ways, our mission as an organization is to carry out our statutory duties. You know, we are told what we have to do. It may just be that in Article 1, we may not even need the vision and mission. You know, that's something that we as the organization develop, but that's not necessarily housed in the bylaws.
Yeah, that's certainly an option that we
Yeah.
could move those more to the plan, and talk about that, you know, more in that context.
Because Charlie, you're right. I mean, it doesn't make sense to have multiple things under the same name. Like, we have different visions, we have different missions, depending on who you talk to or what you're looking at. But by the same token, I don't think the you know, how we envision the, you know, Chittenden County is a bylaw thing.
Yeah, it's not the organizational vision. Yeah.
Right.
But
So,
I'm going to do it this way rather than trying
Yeah,
to find it.
we see it, Catherine.
I agree with Andy. In fact, I think if you really want to focus on a mission and vision statements, that should be at the head of your website. So anybody who comes to it for anything should see that.
Right.
And that's
which one do we use?
Yeah, but which one do you use? That's right. but not, you know, necessarily within the bylaws, but, you know, I mean, yeah, I mean, because you really want to be, you know, the organization wants to be inclusive to help inclusionary, area, region, but, you know, which one do you use? But
So should I take that input and maybe just circle back with our attorney just a little bit? I just want to make sure we're not, you know, losing
Yes.
something important, but because maybe we end up just saying this is the name and our, you know, we're gonna, and maybe there's a paragraph, Andy, that's somewhere between this and the enabling legislation that's Article 2 that
Yes.
kind of does like, and you know, our role is to fulfill our statutory obligations and you know, assist our municipalities, or something a little more generic
Right.
there.
Yeah, and we may want to actually call it then something other than vision or mission, because we use those in a different context.
Yeah. Yeah, purpose or something.
So Bart, again, I actually support this, you know, because I think it does belong somewhere else. What I've sometimes seen is purpose, like
Yeah.
up at the top. Like, why does this document exist, and describe the purpose of the document or the bylaws, which is more mechanical than vision and mission, I think.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Definition.
Okay. That is good feedback. Then I'm going to skip over the mission language here, and you know, kind of we'll look at pulling something like that into the ecos plan. Is that where we landed? And Bard, you just didn't put your hand down, right?
It may be in other places also, but it certainly, I think, belongs in the ecos plan.
Well, yeah, right. And then on our website, Catherine,
And the website,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, and it really, because we've had, like these two competing ones, we've never really quite landed on one, because it has always been a little confusing to staff, I think. So thank you for that. And then I'm gonna go pretty quickly through the rest of this. Well, I'm gonna stop on page 3. There's a whole new section here, section F, started on line 13 on page 3. So this kind of came up as we are applying for a brownfield revolving loan fund, and EPA kind of asked the question to us, like, what's our statutory authority to do something like that? And so this is all from our attorney, who said, like, you should just kind of pull that statutory authority language of what you can do financially into the bylaws here. So that's, you can see it's in accordance with that section of statute. And it has all the types of things we can do financially. Questions, thoughts?
If the attorney told you to do it, do it.
Yeah, I mean,
I
Probably
like
other
that
ways.
response.
As an attorney,
that's how it
right?
always works, isn't it?
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah. That's what, well, they have an excellent attorney for sure. Then I'm gonna skip down, unless there's questions. A lot of this is just cleanup of language and trying to be clear. Like you'll see some changes in the MPO voting, but there's no substantive change. We were just moving a sentence that was down below, up above. And we, again, add a clarifying sentence at the top of page 6. And then there's cleanup under the executive director duties. And I don't think anything to call out there. I'm kind of just scrolling through this. Please stop if you have any questions. Yeah, a lot of it is just using our acronym instead of our name over and over.
Mhm. So I do have one question about Buell's Gore. So they're not an MPO voter.
They're not a municipality in the MPO. Yep.
And it's because they're not chartered, or that, like, wasn't Garrett asking, like, what's his authority to ask to become a voter? Was that just his sense of humor?
No. He actually, Catherine, I don't know if you want to address this, but he did come to the board development committee and kind of made his case.
And he's been asking that for years and years and years to have representation at the MPO from Buell's Gore, but there's very few people there for one thing.
Yeah.
And it's also kind of, and Jeff will be the first one to tell you about this, that it's a very odd situation where essentially the administration appoints the representative from Buell's Gore.
Mm-hmm.
Or appoints the Gore supervisor.
Exactly, the Gore supervisor, yeah.
And the person doesn't even have to live in Buell's Gore.
I know he doesn't live there, so I just want to, like, I feel badly when somebody asks about something and it wasn't addressed, but it sounds like it was addressed, so
yeah,
that's all.
In fact, he worked hard to come up with numbers, but if we used his scoring mechanism, even St. George, which is our smallest municipality, would have like 47 votes or something. I can't remember off the top of my head, but there was humongous amounts of numbers that would be involved in the voting in order to give them equal representation.
Penny stocks, in effect.
Yeah, I think, the Gore has about 20, and I think our next smallest municipality is St. George, but they're close, maybe 900, like almost 1,000 people. So it's like the numbers to actually keep proportional weighting got very wacky. And
it's fun. I just wanted to, like I said, just make sure because I wasn't sure if he was serious or joking.
Oh, no, he was serious.
Yeah, okay.
He has been serious.
Yeah, okay.
For a very long time.
He was also taking it further. Like for some reason, he was extrapolating that into like a representative from the Gore could never be on the executive committee or something, and there is no such restriction.
Right.
He can't vote on MPO business, but
Okay.
So yeah,
because way back when there was just the RPC, I mean, he was chair of the RPC for a long.
And he still has a vote on all the RPC business.
Yeah.
So that has not changed. Okay. Executive director duties. I think there was just a little bit of clarifications in those. The disbursement of funds on number 11 is just updated because we've actually and probably, God, this probably goes back to when Michael O'Brien was chair, but we just have evolved over time. It used to be just the treasurer would sign off on, checks over 5,000 or whatever. It's now all three of these folks, the chair, vice chair, and secretary treasurer are all signers. And honestly, it's kind of evolved into a practice of having the chair sign off on these just because they're
Yeah, I have it.
seeing more of the contractual information. Sorry, Jackie, we don't mean
It's
to leave you
okay.
out.
It's all right.
You're okay.
Yeah, I'm okay.
So that's what that is, reflecting practice. And I did have a conversation with Chris earlier today, and maybe I should have had it with Catherine too, of like just trying to make sure there wasn't too much burden on the chair for all these contracts and things signing off, but it sounds like it's been going okay, and we were able to do it over, DocuSign and things like that now. So, or Catherine, did
Because you
have
get to learn a
perspective?
lot. If you actually read most of the document, you can really learn a lot about what's going on and what kind of contractors do what.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. Then going over to page 7, again, a lot of CCRPC cleanup. And there was one change here, which is there's been weird language about the chair appointing committees and their members. And it said with the concurrence of the RPC. This is on lines like 31 to 35 on page 7. So out of the board development committee came a suggestion to just have it be the concurrence of the executive committee for those appointments, beyond those that are appointed directly by their municipality or VTrans. I don't know if
Yeah.
folks have a feeling about that, if we should go to the full commission or. And I guess you would still take action, Chris, at the full board meeting. We'd have the preliminary, concurrence of the executive committee in advance of the board meeting. Does that feel okay to folks? Okay.
You inserting advise and consent language, is that it?
Basically, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the rest of the executive committee is now the Senate.
Hmm.
Sorry, I'm scrolling quickly. So meetings, Article 8, bottom of page 9. Yeah, oh, sorry, Catherine.
I actually have found something in the old language that missed the first time on page 8.
Okay.
And that's because we have added the EAC to all the committees,
Yeah.
but it says number 5 to oversee the activities, and that lists all the committees. So we need to put the EAC there.
Great. And that is under the duties of the exec committee, right?
Yeah, and it's number 5 that you would put the EAC, it'd be after the Clean Water Advisory Committee. And then we'd put the Equity Advisory Committee as well.
Good change, thank you. Page 10, 11. Really just clean up things. Page 13, there's a new couple sentences on lines 9 to 11, just defining that a quorum is a majority of the voting members present. And we had language in here that our attorney killed because we listened to our attorney, Andy. But it was we had some language in there about our email voting practice, and he was like, no, it's really not consistent with open meeting law, no matter how you couch it. So we tried to kind of keep that ability, because we have had tip amendments and a few other, actually Act 250 votes, I think, even where we've had timing issues. So just, this is my way of saying heads up, we may now, well, we will now have to do something to call a special meeting if we have one of those voting needs. And that might be at the TAC, it might be with this committee, or it might be with the full commission. So just with we're trying to be better and complying, but could be a little more painful when we do that. And then finance committee, the one big change there is kind of reflecting our current practice of one additional commission member joining the executive committee and having, so it's basically the executive committee plus one person from the board serving as the finance committee. The duties and everything are the same, but we're just getting rid of the pretense that we were having separate committee meetings. Hopefully that's okay with folks. Seems like it's been working.
Yep.
And I'm scrolling more quickly. The UPWP committee has just cleaned up with having quack members and EAC members. The TAC is just cleaning up their membership. And adding a paragraph on page 16, which is, again, pretty much our practice about how we get representatives from special interest groups. And trying to get a little bit, there's some things that have changed on the TAC, particularly around the VPSP2 process and the performance measures that we're voting on every year. So those have been added. And a little bit of language around the public participation plan, both the PAC and the TAC reviewing that, but then the final say resting with the EAC. Sorry, I'm going a little quicker. Rep of the EAC on the long range planning committee. And on the quack. And then there's a whole new section H on page 20, which is the Equity Advisory Committee. I guess I'm not quite sure how to bring this up, but I'll just say it. I'm a little concerned about the potential direction the new administration could take in DC. And, I don't know if this, we've been using MPO funds largely to fund our equity work. And so I don't know, if we should, either poke our head up and keep this term, or if we should, back up a little bit to, public participation committee or something a little more generic that has been used by MPOs for longer, or public advisory committees. So anyway, and Nelson, I know, sorry, I don't mean this to be painful, but I'm just looking at some potential scary realities out there, potential, that's not a reality. It was a concern that might come up, but Catherine?
I was thinking the same thing, because based on the prior, when they were already, the number of organizations that had to do away with equity committees under the first go round, I was wondering, did we, doom thinking anyway, whether we would even lose our federal funding because we kept something they called DEI or equity,
Yeah, I think there's definitely some concern. Who knows exactly how that way will come down, but I mean, I think he's been making it pretty clear that he's going to end any, support for DEI work, right? I don't know how that's going to come down or what that might mean, but I'm expecting, because these are federal funds, we're going to be restricted. And I don't want to, we're really focused on engagement and public participation, and there's equity elements to that, but we might be safer in rebranding. So I don't know. And also, I know we talked to the committee over, I think it was in the summertime, about different name options, as we were talking about this with them, and they were happy with the existing name, but I don't know, we may come back with this new political environment and have a little different conversation with the EAC.
Yeah, I mean, my job title too is
Yeah.
another, that might need to change too. But I have the same question, like, is it smarter to just proactively kind of rebrand, or do we wait and see what happens?
Right.
I don't know. I think there's a lot of ways to continue the work, even
Yeah.
if and when we have to rebrand. So I'm not so worried about that, but
Right. Yeah. I
more
think this is
strategically.
purely
Yeah.
a labeling issue.
Yeah.
And we're not under any timeline here, so I was kind of thinking we can, bounce this off of the EAC and come back in January or February on this. And by February we would know what he's doing, because there's probably January 20th. There's going to be a lot of executive orders that come down, right? So Bart.
I'm wrestling with this, frankly, for the first time in the last 5 minutes, but one of the things I'm thinking is one of our roles is to mitigate risk, including financial risk to the organization. So do we think this is a valid, likely, or what's the likelihood that this is a real risk? And if we experienced it before, at least if you believe what you read in the media, it might be worth his time based on who he's appointing and what he's trying to do with career staff. I don't know where that leaves us. And again, I guess not at all criticizing or questioning the work. It really is about branding. Should we do something? Because I really have two minds. One mind, part of me is like, nope, heck with that. Let's keep our head up and held high. And the other is, if there's a financial risk for that, as sort of keepers of the policy and risk for the organization, should we put a helmet on?
Yeah, I do think there is some risk here. With just the label equity, right? Yeah, if it's all right, I think if you're okay with us kind of working with the EAC on this a little bit and coming back to you, because I do think
that would be wise. I mean, unfortunately, I think that's we got to explore that at least.
Yeah.
I think we're in that situation where we have to explore that.
And I'm a little, I'm worried about the EAC's reaction too, because I think, Bard, there will be members that feel like your other option of like, no, let's do the right thing. Yeah, unfortunately, yeah, we will quickly learn who has the power here, which is, it's in the federal government, because these are federal funds. So I think that was a little bit of cleanup in the conflict of interest section, and including a new last subsection 4 on the bottom of page 22, and that came out of I can't remember which agency was it VEM Forest, where they wanted some additional language in the conflict of interest. Oh, you're muted. But anyway,
it was. Sorry.
Okay, sorry.
Yes.
So anyway, that's it. So we'll work a little bit on the purpose, and then the EAC changes, and bring this back. I don't know. We got a lot on January, so I don't know if this will make it back to January. And I think there are holidays between now and then. I can't remember. So maybe February may be more likely. And Nelson, I think that the committee is meeting in December, right? Is it meeting next week?
Yeah, we're meeting next week. Yeah, I just made a note of this to talk about it with them, or bring it up at least.
And we may need to, bring it up in December and talk more with the committee in January.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, sorry, Chris, that was a little bit deeper dive than I
No, it's
intended,
all
but
important, because this is the template for the next 7 years. It seems like we don't change the bylaws but every 7 years. So
yeah.
thank you, Catherine, for doing the work on this with your crew.
Thank you. You're welcome.
This is not easy. This is the stuff school boards do every day of the week.
True.
And it all turns out to be like, we did this 20 years ago. I don't think this is the case with us. Good. Let's move on to item 8 then. The draft. I'm sorry, I can't find it. I'm still waiting.
Board and committee member handbook.
Thank you. There we go.
And I don't know, Emma or Ann Nelson, do you want to lead this or do you want me to try? You guys may be more familiar.
Either way, yeah, I'm happy to walk through it. I don't know whether folks have already looked through it ahead of time or whether it would be helpful to actually go through it together. But essentially, we just finally got around to updating this, what was the board member handbook, and kind of broadening the scope so that it also covers committee members. Updating it, simplifying it, and then also infusing it with some code of conduct related content. So if you remember a while back, I brought like a board and committee version of the code of conduct to you all, and it was so long and it was way too much. And we heard that feedback. And so we've tried to just pull out the essential bits and pieces and integrate it into this handbook. But you all tell me, is it helpful to walk through together? Have you already looked at it? Do folks already have questions?
Maybe
It might be helpful to just go through it together quickly.
Okay.
Bard, did you?
I was just going to note that the terms mission, vision, and equity appear in this document, so probably raise similar discussion elements, elements that are similar to what we just had.
I know, I was just thinking about like all the places in our work that the word equity has made its way into and that we've worked hard to do so over the past few years. And I don't know how deep we want to go in rebranding, but that is going to be,
I don't
that's gonna
think
have to be part of that
beyond the
conversation.
label, I don't think you have to look much deeper, but that's my opinion. I'm not the lawyer. What do you think, Andy?
I think that's right. I think as odd as it is, I think the focus by some is much more on the labels than the actions, is my sense. And so I think there's much you could do, but I think people get caught up with the labels is what's happening now. But who knows? The new world we're in, kind of.
Would it be helpful for me to share my screen or do you have it in front of you?
I would say share it.
Okay.
Just because then we'll be looking at the same thing
Yeah.
at the same time.
See if I can. Okay. Can you all see this?
Yeah.
Great. Okay, so table of contents at the beginning. A lot of this content came from the old board member handbook. We just tried to modernize it, the language a little bit. Overview of CCRPC, this content's all pretty much the same. We've added the 4 core values that staff and the EAC and you all kind of collectively developed some months ago. With vision and mission, a note that these will be updated as well. And the equity commitment. And then we have a section with the organization structure, just how do we operate? Emma has done a great job of making this far more readable than it was. Clarifying membership, who votes, who doesn't vote. We have a link here to our organization chart and committee representation. So I think Emma has linked to all of the website pages that summarize each committee. So instead of including all that content here, we just have links.
It doesn't have the equity committee or the new public participation committee listed.
Does it
I missed
not?
it. There it is.
Oh, here's Equity Advisory Committee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't have my glasses focused well. They're on, but then now you have to focus correctly. I was looking, I was just going in order, and usually the last one in,
I
so
know, usually, I know. Yeah, you're right. Usually it's at the end.
sorry.
And then here's where some of the content is new. So board and committee member expectations, if you remember in the old handbook, there were like expectations around the roles and responsibilities of board members in different areas in that handbook. And also some content around behavioral expectations, like, please be present in meetings, things like that. We've tried to condense it and simplify it so that it's board member roles and responsibilities. So this is your work-based roles and responsibilities organized with these bolded headings. And links to resources that might be helpful. I'm not going to walk through all of them, but you can look through them. And then a brief section on committee member roles and responsibilities, but really just saying check out our bylaws or the website since it depends on the committee. And then we have kind of the behavioral expectation. So this is the code of conduct content, and we've simplified it to this list of 10 what we're calling right now group expectations or group agreements. These are somewhat still in the process of being developed, edited by staff. And they come from a combination of the Equity Advisory Committee's ground rules that they've been working from. And then if you remember in the staff version of the code of conduct, we have like a long list of behavioral expectations that we've tried to boil down to these more simplified 10, simple things like be fully present, ready to participate, respect and accept diversity, engage in respectful dialogue, listen attentively, use accessible language. So definitely welcome if you all want to look at these and have thoughts, obviously on any of this content, but particularly these kind of group agreements or ground rules, since we might start practicing bringing them to meetings, would be great. And then public meeting expectations and open meeting law section, meeting attendance and preparedness. Some other code of conduct language was pulled in around conflict of interest, but it really just links to the bylaws, so we're not redundant. And then we've added these short sections around partisan and nonpartisan political activity. So what you can and can't do as a board member or committee member when it comes to both partisan and nonpartisan political activity. And 2 brief definitions of harassment and discrimination. And some code of conduct implementation pieces. So just saying that when you join, you will sign an acknowledgement of this code of conduct or this handbook. You will go through some kind of onboarding or orientation. I know Charlie's been doing that for new board members. We encourage regular feedback within this environment and within all committee environments, education and training. And then the last kind of new section is this conflict resolution piece, where again, we are trying to infuse some of that restorative approach that we've integrated into the staff code of conduct, also into this board and committee code of conduct. And really all that it says is our first line of defense with conflict is going to be dialogue. So if there's a conflict within one of these meetings or between members, can we work it out ourselves? Can we work it out with a third-party facilitator if needed? Can we talk through it? If that doesn't work out, then we move to this kind of more formal process, which was the only process that was in the previous section. And that's really just the exec committee will review concerns and decide on the action. So again, really trying to emphasize, especially in today's world of seemingly increased conflict, trying to work through it verbally first. So we have a section around reporting to try to clarify that. And then some resources. Okay, I know you all have this, so I'm gonna stop sharing, and if there's any like one particular section that you all are interested in digging into in more depth, we can. But I don't want to take up too much time reading.
And where is the timeline from this draft, Ken Nelson?
Sorry, say that again, Chris, the
Uh,
timeline?
Yeah, what's going next for the draft here?
I think receiving feedback from you all, initial reactions, thoughts, and then there's a couple pieces we're waiting to hear from staff. I think we've also given staff the opportunity to review this. So those group agreements or expectations staff are working on. So I don't know, Charlie, we'll take this back, do some tweaking and then bring it to the next meeting for.
Yeah,
Well-
yeah, I think, yeah, partly, I think we want to ask you, like, when do you think this is getting to a place where you're comfortable bringing it to the full commission? And maybe, I guess we'll bring it back to you in and also you think we'll have any edits or revisions from staff and stuff?
Yeah.
The next couple weeks?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Yeah, so we could, put it on the January agenda for your meeting, and you can decide if you want to bring it to the board or if you want to, do some more fine tuning.
I mean, I appreciate the overview you just gave. I find it very helpful to sort of hear a summary like that, and especially when you're the one working on it so much. The summary you give is the one that you think are the highlights of it. And so I just find that really helpful. And I mean, I think it's all on the right track. So at this point, I don't really have any specific comments other than, I mean, I'd say keep getting the feedback that you're doing, but I think it's on the right track.
The one note we had, it's kind of top of page 8, but it's about the signed acknowledgement of the code of conduct upon appointment. And we've had some language, it might have been just around conflict of interest. I don't know. There must have been a federal rule somewhere or in some grant program or something that required that at some point in time. But it has not been a practice that we've been following for quite a while. And I don't know if you have thoughts about that, or, this is one way we're trying to get more buy-in by board and committee members. But there are alternatives, more or less intense, right? Like less intense would be, hey, we presented this to you and we're documenting that. It used to be, I think what was somewhere, I can't remember where it was, it might have been in our bylaws. There was something about doing this acknowledgement annually, like doing it every year, or maybe it was in the handbook, I can't remember. So this could be more intense or less intense. I don't know if you have thoughts as board members, what makes sense to you. Or maybe we're doing a training every year, when we have new board members on this, and that's when the acknowledgement is signed or something. I don't know. Thoughts, Jackie?
I mean, I think it's worth doing it every year just to refresh everyone's memory of what you signed on for. And it's, I have to say to both Emma and Ann Nelson, it's a lot more readable, and I think it's easier to at least in my memory. I haven't looked at it since the board, whatever the board handbook was, I haven't looked at it in years. So I don't think it's a bad idea to encourage an annual review and a sign off. Just me.
I'm kind of ambivalent on the sign off. I'm fine with it. I'm fine without it. The way I look at sign offs like this is they serve multiple purposes, but often it's binding somebody, and then you look and see if they don't comply, what are the ramifications of that? And I'm not sure what the
Mhm.
ramifications here would be if somebody signs off on something and, others argue that they're not following it. What happens then? So, but on the other hand, a sign off sometimes is just an acknowledgement that you received it, that you read it, that you understand it, that you acknowledge it, that will commit to try to comply with it as best as you can. So there are multiple purposes. I think if we're going to do a sign off, it might just be good to have in there what the purpose of the sign off is.
Yeah, what I've seen more for sign-offs are either ethics or conflict of interest specifically, as opposed to all the other guidelines, like I'll comply with open public meeting law, you go on and on. So I guess similar to Andy, I'm not really compelled one way or the other, partly because what's the remedy if there's an issue? And I am cynical at times. It's like signing off for your software license.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was thinking exactly that. Scroll to the bottom, check you didn't read it, but yeah.
But I do think like trainings or, the annual or because we do get new board members, just reminders of what our goals are, what we're aspiring towards, I think is something really important.
Yeah, I think that's a good touchstone, is having a training on this exact handbook as part of a half hour before our regular meeting, 5:30 to 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
So back in the day when we had pizza, the added incentive. Is the question about the sign off, Charlie, where we included the sign off because it was a federal requirement? Is that correct? Did I misinterpret what you were saying about that, or was there some language in the sign off that was directly attributed to a federal program?
I
you
think
recall?
To Bard's point, it probably came from some grant for conflict of interest issues at some point in time. But to my knowledge, and Forrest, unless you know better, I mean, I don't think there's been nobody has asked for signed acknowledgements. But they want to see our policy, like that. There are consequences, of not following whatever our policy is. So, yeah. So I don't think there's any federal direction on this. I think it's pretty much what makes sense to you folks, or the full board. And I do
go
appreciate
ahead,
the
Troy.
feedback on the training, because I think the education and training, maybe we can kind of get a little bit more explicit in that little subsection about doing annual training.
You've been busy.
What's that?
I said you have been busy though.
Yeah.
Delegate.
Well, I mean, the board development, talks about, having trainings at the beginning, that's one of the things that board development is supposed to do is, we've particularly Jeff has been very good about suggesting trainings all the time. And of course, staff has done the trainings, but, this certainly can be part of that rotation.
Yeah. Yep.
I was just gonna add on page 6, that kind of draft list of group expectations. It doesn't have to be right now, but given you all's experience in this setting and just in kind of public meetings settings in general, if you have any thoughts around just like what are the expectations or hopes that you have for how people show up in this space, because we're really trying to develop a core list. Ideally, I'd like it to be even shorter, of kind of shared agreements that CCRPC staff can start to bring to committee meetings, board meetings, and also public meeting settings, so that we can have some consistency there. So if there's any that you think are missing or that are there that don't feel relevant, whatever thoughts you might have, feel free to email me or reach out in another way.
And also, Emma, did you have anything you wanted to call out?
I don't think so specifically, just you'll see like the call out graphics throughout, so those will be, you know, added. But I think just keeping in mind the audience for this, you know, is important. You know, we do really want it to be a resource. So as you know, if you have any other thoughts, and again, I think you know, making this into a very simple PowerPoint and having a presentation about this annually, that's great feedback. I think that makes a lot of sense. To Jackie's point, like, you know, the last time it was updated was, I think, just after I was hired 10 years ago, so or more. So it definitely needed a refresh, and we try to consolidate as best as possible. But certainly any other feedback you have between now and the next meeting, you can send it along.
Well, I think that, you know, it's great work, and my effort for my own language and the way I tend to write would make it helpful in the call out graphic 1 through 10 to really make it pithy, with some punch. And so for the extent of, if you'll excuse me for wordsmithing here, the you know, number 1, be fully present, ready to actively participate to the extent you're able, please limit distractions. Of course, you're going to make the second sentence limit distractions, yeah, maybe with a double dash, the old M dash, transitioning from be fully present and participating. So that, you know, the whole bullet point comes together in a single phrase and or thought, or 2 phrases, as opposed to having to read through all the filler words. And again, I'm sorry if I'm practicing English writing skills here on the fly. But similarly in 7, you know, focusing on interests, not positions. I don't understand interests in the context there. So maybe there's a better way to do it. It's punchy, I love it, but I need a better definition of what interest means. You know, focus on you know, policy, or focus on process, not I don't know, arguing. And I think that's the gist of it, is one isn't arguing as much as promoting. And so, you know, promote policies, or promote as opposed to argue, you know, and or promote processes. So that may not be my strong point, is promoting processes or policies. So similarly with the rest of the other 10 items, and I'd go through it detail by detail, but that's my take on it. And because I think what you've done is a great effort to distill what you've had up in number 9, number 8, number 7 above, and now we really need to just, you know, hit them with the repeating it again in a much more bullet point format, because it's there, I think, above in board members' roles and responsibilities 1 through 9, but to have it as a bullet point, and whether 1 through 9 match the 1 through 9 in the section above, would be helpful. You know, maybe not numbered, maybe lettered or bullet pointed. Does that help? Just format wise.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah, no, that's great. That's really helpful, Chris. I think that makes a lot of sense. And that's, yeah, and you're right. We are distilling feedback from all sorts of, you know, we had a lot of staff feedback on these, on
I
those
imagine
items.
a butcher blackboard and
Yeah.
everybody's writing 25 words on it. And yet,
Yeah.
you know, you're going to have to catch the attention of someone who's now on page 5 or page 6 of reading a handbook. And
Yeah.
I think you want something that will jump out at them. And as you
Yeah.
said, you want it to be a resource for people to be able to use. Well, the bullet points are something I can use. And it would be very helpful in a training session for me to look at, you know, oh, here's 1 through 10, your roles and responsibilities, but here they are distilled in the bullet point format. Boom.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
that's my
absolutely.
take
Thank
on it.
you.
But
Yeah,
I'm
that's
sorry
great. Thanks.
if I went on too deep.
No, that's helpful. Thank you.
Anyone else? We ready to move on, are we? Charlie?
Yep. Personnel policy update.
All right, we have more draft stuff.
Yeah, right. And you're like, no, we took care of this back in June, or no,
Right.
September 4th. It wasn't even June, it was September 4th. So here we are, 3 months later. Now we're actually trying to use this policy language that you approved a few months ago, as well as cleaning up some typos. So if I'm scrolling now, I'm on page 44 of the packet, the section 3, the family medical leave. So this is really all of what I'm about to talk about is kind of trying to work out the little details about how Family Medical Leave Act requirements, that protects your job for 12 weeks, interplays with family medical leave insurance, which either has I think it's up to 12 weeks of family leave family leave and 26 weeks of medical leave. And then how does that interplay with our benefits in particular? And so, okay, now I'm on that page and you can see multiple parties editing with different colors. And we did have HR Happens, our HR consultant, kind of help us with some of this. And also, so some of this is clarifying on this first page here. The reasonable notice language was down below. We just pulled that up. And sorry, I'm bouncing back and forth. Sorry, this is not easy to reference. So the bottom of page 44, if you're looking at the packet with me, you were trying to make clear that an employee starts family medical leave, like that 12-week of job protection, at the same time that they're filing for insurance benefit, right? So those are two things that are happening concurrently. And the medical insurance, the family medical leave insurance provides up to 70% or provides 70% of the regular pay. And they can use PTO or holiday leave to kind of round that out if they want to try to get 100% pay recovery. So the notice is on the bottom of page 44 to page 45. And so there was language at the top of page 45 that was pretty clear during the 12 weeks of Family Medical Leave Act protection that you were covered. We had language that has been in our policy for a long time. Your benefits are going to continue for that 12 weeks, right? So that was all pretty clear. What wasn't clear is what happens after the 12 weeks. And so that's what we're trying to work on. And you'll see in the middle of that page, after the FMLA period of 12 weeks, an employee receiving intermittent FMLA benefits and working less than 24 hours. And I guess that the word intermittent probably shouldn't be there, because that could be all the way down to 0 hours of work. They could just be on leave. What we're thinking is we'll be offered health and dental insurance. We talked to our health insurance company, our broker, and they're like, your health insurance company is going to want, after the 12 weeks, you're going into a different situation where we're in the Cobra Viper. Viper is the state version of Cobra. If you haven't seen that before, somebody was creative. So that we would keep the employee, basically provide them benefits through Cobra Viper, and that we would reimburse the employee for those benefits. So it's kind of a weird situation where the employee has to take on the responsibility through Cobra of paying for those benefits, and then we would pay them at the rate of the 24 hours but less than 30-hour column, which, like, for health insurance, I think is 75%. I don't know, it's probably down here somewhere. Not looking at it right now. Or Forrest, correct me if I'm getting that wrong.
Right.
Oh, we can't hear you. Oh, wait.
I
maybe
did
just
unmute. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you just weren't close enough, I don't think. Yep.
You are correct, sir. 75%. Sorry.
Okay. so that is really the most significant change. And then, and if they work more than 24 hours, they would still get the benefits consistent with the figure. So either, they're either in that 24 to 30 category, which is 75%, or they're above 30. But if they're above 30, they're probably not taking much leave, right? But I guess you could take a day a week, right, and care for a child or a parent or whatever. Any questions on that? That's kind of how the FMLI, how we're dealing with benefits after this FMLA period of 12 weeks. And then we get into the insurance section, starts at the bottom of page 45. Mostly just cleanup issues, except when we get to the PTO bank. So this was another detail that we, trying to be helpful, thought this would be useful, but that now we're trying to like add some more detail, and basically asking, if the employee sees a need to use FMLI and might seek the supplemental use of the supplemental PTO bank, like try to prepare for situations that you can see coming. Obviously, if you can't, if I get hit by a bus, I'm not going to have saved my PTO waiting to get hit by a bus. But whatever you can to prepare for the situation. And then it is still keeping most of the discretion with me or with the chair if I'm the employee affected, about whether to provide the additional PTO time so they can get up to 100% pay, case by case, and just kind of noting that we have 30 days of this in this bank, so it is a finite resource, and that we need to just make sure we have those requests as soon as possible, because it starts to affect our billing rates and other weird things that we have to do. So that is really that section. Did that raise any questions for folks? And then at the bottom of page 46, there's just some new language kind of, and this was really kind of coming from a more legalistic standpoint, like we're not extending the FMLA leave, but you can request the unpaid leave, which is in the below section here, to kind of continue your leave of absence beyond the 12 weeks. And I should note that, I did get some input from staff, but was working on this before Thanksgiving. We have a meeting set up with staff in a week or two to kind of walk through this in more detail and see if there's more questions or issues. So this is still just a first draft for you to take a look at. Let us know if you see any concerns. And I think the rest of it is the unpaid, personal leave of absence and that figure 1 benefit summary table. Any issues, concerns? I think the issues are probably going to come more from staff, but I think we were really trying to figure out the compromise situation. Well, the policy was just silent, like what happened after the 12 weeks to your benefits. So we were trying to get to a reasonable compromise place, so that the business office wasn't tortured without any reason for like stopping benefits and restarting benefits and things like that, or the employee for that matter. All right. I put you all to sleep, and I know you're going to rest more fitfully tonight after this conversation. Thank you for listening. Let me know if you have any edits or thoughts about this later. We will bring this back either January or February. I'm hoping January, and apologies for doing this, but Ann Nelson, I don't know if you want to share your news with the group here. I'm not sure they may be aware that you may be taking advantage of some of this.
Yeah, I don't think I have shared that with this group. I am 7 months pregnant. So it's a little alive for me, this discussion, but I might be the impetus for which everyone's like, we have to figure this out.
Yeah, we definitely need to figure this out. I'm hoping by January, because your February meeting is cutting it a little too close for my taste. Well, probably for your taste too, yeah, Nelson.
Yeah, yeah, we'll see. So
Well, congratulations.
But it's yeah, congratulations, and Nelson for sure. And it was helpful to have a real world situation now coming up that we need to test our policy with. And like, how does this really work? Like those words sounded good a few months ago. So yeah, we may have some refinements or additions or changes here after we walk through it more deeply with staff. But just wanted to give you a heads up that this was coming back at you.
Great. Would now be the time for an equity update, Dan Nelson?
oh yeah. So I think we are trialing is there the one-page summary in the packet? I
Page
just exited
49.
out. Oh, great. Okay. So instead of me just talking to you all, you have updates in front of you, and instead we'll just open it up in case anybody has questions or comments. I tried to keep it as simple as possible, and just explore this format. So also, let me know how this feels. I will just say, I will share one update, which is that Sarah Muskin, who's a land use planner at CCRPC, and I went to St. Louis last week to go to, there's a national network called the Government Alliance on Race and Equity, and it's a lot of people working in the equity space in the public sector. And they had their conference, and there were nearly 4,000 people there. It was huge. Yeah, people working at all levels of government on equity related work, some nonprofit folks there too. But anyways, really neat to gather with other kind of equity practitioners at this odd moment in history. So that was a highlight.
Pretty cool. How was St. Louis?
Strange city. It was
Really?
it was at a convention center downtown. I think it was in a weird part of town right near the stadium. So it felt really deserted. Apparently the population of St. Louis has been declining pretty steadily since the 70s. And they're having a hard time keeping people there. And I definitely felt that. There were not many people around.
It's sort of like a business office park, and you're staying at the hotel in the business office park on a weekend.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
But met some really, really, really neat people, and I've got some inspiration and motivation from folks from all across the country, which was fun.
And did you get a little recognition there too, Ann Nelson?
I did. I was called out as I was given like a little award for being basically an active member of the Government Alliance on Race and Equity, which really maybe speaks more to how much I post on the online forum and say help. But no, I've gotten a lot out of that network, and they host some really great webinars and do a great job of sharing resources with one another. And
yeah, that's great.
So
wonderful. I like the format. Anybody else have comments or questions for Ann Nelson on the format or content? Good stuff.
Chris, the only thing I would say, and Nelson, is, there are things in here where they're in process. So we're somewhere on a journey, and sort of the next steps or tentative end dates. That's what I think of when I read some of these. So, okay, we're mid-course. When do we think that thing will be done?
yeah,
That's just where my mind goes. I don't know if that's useful.
that is useful. Yeah, maybe next time I'll organize it by, or somehow flag what's in process and be a little clearer about timelines, because there's a lot that's always in process.
Which is the question I always have on the ECOS update. So, When,
Yeah.
when are we still targeting that? Because I don't have Taylor here to ask. Is it April? Is it August? Maybe you know better than we, or maybe you're the linchpin for the ecos plan. I don't think you are, but
One of them.
One of
I think,
them.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
The engagement
Yeah.
piece.
I think we're trying to, and Emma and Nelson, if you remember better than I do, but or maybe Eleni, but I think we're trying to get to a final draft to the board like next fall.
Mhm.
And I say fall a little loosely, but you know, I expect some, you know, it may be October, November. And then there's, you know, the public hearing, the adoption process and the hearings required at the end, almost and then we have to do a 60 days to the land use review board. Like it's almost a full 6 months that you need at the end.
120 days, 180 days.
At least, yeah. And that also depends on how the hearings line up. So yeah, I'm hoping by the end of the calendar year for sure. But you know, we don't have a December board meeting, so that's why I'm saying October, November.
Mhm.
And that's kind of the final draft version, right? Before it goes through those reviews and hearings. Does that line up with what you guys are hearing from Taylor and Sarah? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think engagement will probably start in January. I mean, in some ways it's already started with meetings in all the different municipalities, but yeah,
Yep.
that sounds right.
Well, great. So we'll have a bit more of you, hopefully, Ann Nelson, then before you step off to a different role.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? Maybe I'll still be able to attend, just on mute with a yeah, exactly, with a child with an arm
with a
or
screen blacked out.
screaming child in the background, one or the other. But hopefully we'll still be around as much as I can.
I like it.
Yeah.
Great. All right. Well, thank
Oh,
you
no.
again.
Could be a screaming child right on your lap, you know?
Yeah.
I know, most of the time you'd never know.
Mhm. Well,
Right.
thank you for the work on both the board handbook and our new format of the equity update, which is, I think, helpful. With some added dateline progress reports, as Bard puts it, for where are we in the spectrum or continuum of these things. Charlie, we're going to move to 11, Chair, Director, Executive Director report. I didn't have anything to report, as always.
Yeah, I'm going to include the ECOS plan conversation we just had as my first update. So in the minutes, because Emma reminded me I'm actually doing the minutes tonight too, because why not? And Vermont Clean Cities, just the last communication I had with Peggy, who's the director there, is that I think that they are considering or leaning towards setting up their own nonprofit to run that program, which is probably okay. Yeah. From a variety of perspectives. So that's that note. Executive director evaluation process. And you know, Chris brought this up last month, so I have it on here. I haven't forgotten about it. We are having a staff retreat Friday. And I'm mentioning that because we have a consultant who's helping us with that. He did a version of a survey of staff, you know, kind of short version. Did I send that to all of you? I think maybe or did I just send it to Chris?
That's me, I think.
Oh, I just sent it to you. Okay. Yeah, happy to share that with you. It was kind of a quick survey. Or if anybody, Emma, I don't know if you have that, or if you can send it to the exec committee, that'd be awesome before I forget. But because we're doing that in this week in December, that has kind of distracted us from focusing on the bigger picture of like the survey that we want to do as part of the executive director evaluation. And frankly, it may be more of like kind of an organizational checkup, as well as give you feedback you know, in terms of your evaluation of me. And I'll also be doing a self-evaluation, you know, form that I usually do of some sort. I am going to look at, see if I can come up with a better form, or if you have suggestions on that, if you know of a evaluation form you think works well, that you think we should be using, or should at least consider parts of, please forward that on. Because at this point, and then I'm going to work with the consultant to do the to get the survey ready. I think that survey will probably go out in January, and we'll be in a place to do my evaluation probably at the March executive committee meeting, which is sooner than we've typically been doing it in like April. And Chris, hopefully this is a help to you. The consultant, Jason Lorber, is willing to not only help with the develop the survey instrument, but also tabulating and analyzing the results a bit, so that you'll get a little bit more of a, you know, full package, Chris, instead of just raw data. So hopefully that's a helpful step in this process. Any other things on my evaluation process that I should work on? Okay, I'm going to stop asking questions. And other, well, there's probably a bunch of other things, but I'm still coming back into work world. So yeah, any other questions for me, or?
Any other new business? Hearing none, we're going to ask for an executive session to discuss personnel matters. No action, I believe, is anticipated, but we'll have our board members, and we'll excuse the rest. And
Thanks,
then
everyone.
we will adjourn.
Thank you, staff.
So need a motion for executive session. Thank you, to discuss personnel.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
You want to have a
you.
motion to go into executive
Yes, you
session?
I'll
need
move
to.
to go into executive session to discuss
Thank-
personnel matters.
Thank you,
I'll
Andy.
second.
Thank you,
I
Jackie.
second. Yep.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And
Aye.
anyone opposed, please speak up.
Congrats. Here we go.
For all,
Thank you all.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Amy. Thanks, Nelson.
thank you.